I want to go over the steps quickly, and then let's see if we can work out step by step what's going on here. So again, what does Ula say? Ula says the reason why Rabbanan hold you can't use a shofar from a par, is because it's from the case of the Big Day Zahav that the Kohen wore, right? So, what's the problem with the Big Day Zahav, right? When you see the Big Day Zahav, what do you think about? The Egel Zahav, except for Moshe. Yeah. But everyone else thinks about that except for Moshe. Well, I'll answer that. Don't worry, we'll answer that. But for now, there's an association with the Egel Zahav that emerges because the Kohen Gadol is wearing this clothing. So Gemara says, 1 second. So if that's true, okay. And why? Because we said because you don't want the guy who's helping you out to also be your plaintiff to make against you, the accuser defender thing. Okay, so Gemara says really, the ha dam par. What about the fact that we use the dam of the par? Now again, that means you're bringing a cow, a par, which is directly associated with the egel zav. You're taking the dam from it, but there's an association there. Dam to par. Egel Zav of the...
By taking a dam.
Taking the dam. Right. Sorry. Taking the dam. So the Gemara says that should be the same thing, right? So how could you use the par in the base of Mikdash? So the Gemara says, no. There's something... Avram Shlomo. Looks like a charm. So the Gemara says, Hol v'ishtani. So Rashi explains, what does it mean? Hol v'ishtani means, since it changed, it's changed. Meaning what? It's dam. The ain maris a par nikr. So you don't see the par. It's not the par. The cow is not recognizable in the blood. What does that mean? Okay, so that's step one. Then the Gemara says, we'll go back and define each step. Then the Gemara says,
I'm sorry.
The first step is, the first answer the Gemara gives is dam is different than the par. So the question is, why doesn't that work by the zahav of the Big Day Zahav be different than the Egel Zahav? Then the Gemara says, okay. What about the Aron and Kaparas and Kruv? The Aron, the Kaparas and Kruvim were in the Kodesh Kadashim, right? And they were surrounded with gold, right? So what do you do about that? Why aren't you worried about everyone other than Moshe making the association of the gold on the Aron with the Egel Azav? So the Gemara says the reason why is Chota Bal Yaakov Karmina, which basically means that we're only dealing with the person who's bringing Chota, meaning the Kohen Gadol, okay, doing the hakrava, right? So there's no hakrava. The Aron doesn't do an hakrava. It's fixed. It's permanent. It sits there. But the Kohen does something. Why is that a good answer? So then the Gemara says, okay, but if it's what the Kohen does, but he also uses the kaf and the machta, which both are movable kalim. It's part of the Baal Yakriv is using kalim. What about, and they're covered with gold. Why aren't you worried about the association there? So the Gemara says, no, that's why it's the Big Day Zav. What's the big deal? Because it's Baal Yisna. It's literally the personal adornments of the Kohen Gadol. And then the Gemara's final conclusion is Bifnim. Okay? So the question is, let's start with step one. What's the first move the Gemara is making? The Gemara first says, the first move the Gemara makes is that you would think that if you saw Dam, in that in the kli,
no reason to jump to par.
Because there's nothing in the dam itself that tells you it's dam A versus B over C. There's no property in dam, not microbiologically. Okay, saying the way you look at it, if you saw 3 pitchers of blood, you wouldn't know that one is human, one is pig, and one is cow. They look the same. So since there's nothing to differentiate it, that's why you're not worried about the association.
Unless you were young.
That's a beautiful raya. It's a good proof, right? Oh, Johnny's being good proof. What happened? No, they bring his coat back, and it's got animal blood on it, and they say Taraf, right? It's clearly not the point of the story, but I'm saying when Yaakov saw the blood, Yaakov's not going to say, oh, by the way, that's not human blood, it's cow blood. He didn't test the coagulation rates or the hemoglobin. He saw it, right. So I agree. So step one. So what's step one? Step one is that
I was saying you don't need to.
So now the Gemara. So that's why you don't make the differentiation, because there's no property of the dam that allows you to differentiate. Beautiful. Now, what about the Aron? The Gemara's next question is.
A question before this.
The Gemara sounds very crazy. The Gemara is saying that you would think that the same problem association exists in the Aron and the Kruv, all those things that are in the actual Kodesh Kodashim, whereas it's not, because Chota Bal Yakriv. In other words,
what premise is attacked?
got rid of dam. Fine. But one second. Gold itself, gold attached to mikdash things should equal association, right? We've isolated gold as being the issue. That's the move the Gemara makes. Gold is the issue. But one second. What are you distinguishing between the gold of the Aron and the gold on the begadim of the Kohen Gadol? So Gemara's answer is that the Aron's fixed. The Kohen Gadol's the Baal Makriv. He's doing stuff.
An active component in the process.
Okay, good. So that's the next step in the Gemara. Very good, Yaakov. Yaakov's right. What you must say then is that what makes the Aron different than the Kohen Gadol?
It's
not just
fixed and the Kohen isn't.
Well, it's passive. In other words, the Aron is part of Kapara. There's a reality. The reality of the existence of the Aron does play a part in Kapara. When the Kohen Gadol's in there, the idea of the Aseret Dibros, whatever, must be in his mind. Okay? But the point, though, is very nice. Yaakov's saying beautifully. The Aron, it's passive insofar as its involvement in the Avoda, whereas the Kohen Gadol is active. It has to be an active, it's going to Maisa Avoda, an active participant. Why must that be the case? Because, Yaakov?
This the Kohen Gadol is the.
Because the next question is, what's the next question?
What is the next question?
Kaf Umachta.
Yes.
Why is that the logical next question to ask?
I almost got it, because those things move too.
Exactly. Right? In other words, that's why what we're saying, this is how you develop a methodological stream. Because you see that now one flows into the other. So now, Kaf and Machta is a beautiful question. Because they're both part of the Avoda process.
We're trying to lock it down.
That's what I said before. And we had a general idea of association, and now we're halakhically refining it. So how do you answer that now? So the Gemara says, Kaf and Machta.
Has to be worn by.
But now the Gemara says, no, because it's not Bal Yisnoah. Now this is the hardest move. What's Bal Yisnoah? I know what it means literally, but yeah. So therefore, what? This is the best move in the law. It specifically uses the term Bal Yisna, which means literally personal adornments. Why would the Gemara use that terminology of personal adornments and saying that's the reason why? That's the reason why it doesn't apply to the Kaf Machta. What is it saying now?
Well, there are two things.
Dylan, you're hitting on a very good point. Avram Shlomo is hitting on a good point. Avram Shlomo is saying that what makes the Zahav of the Begadim different than the Zahav of the Kaf Machta is that, what do you think, what quality does Zahav have? What does Zahav do?
Regal.
It's regal. It's regal and royal, etc. So okay, so if that's the case, what's the Gemara Svara? You're right. What's the Gemara Svara? What's the Gemara teaching us then? Take it back now to the ego.
Gold represents the king. You can't be asking for a shul from.
There's no drush whatsoever here. What the Gemara is saying is this. The Gemara is saying is that when it comes to making an association, okay, of the zav to the ego zav, it's when the zav, when the zav is functioning as beautification that association is made. Why? Because it's not a coincidence that when they made the ego, they made it out of gold. They want part of that was beautifying this ego as well. In other words, they want to be a beautiful ego. So what Gemara is telling you is that in order for the association to emerge between the gold and the Egel Zav, it has to be when the gold is functioning as a beautifier. And when is it functions as a beautifier? When it's on the begadim of the Kohen Gadol. Because that's what it's doing. It's making his garments more beautiful. Just like the Zahav by the Egel Zav function to beautify the Egel as well. To answer your question, the Gemara is saying this. The Gemara is saying is that there is an idea of an association between gold and the Egel Zav. But the Gemara, that's an overall, like, let's say, philosophical idea, or maybe psychological. The point is, there's some association you make. But what the Gemara is telling you is that there has to be some halachic tzura to it. It can't just be association per se. Why? Because you see, the Aron was made out of gold. The Kaf is made out of gold. Why is just a big day Zav? So step by step, the Gemara is showing you, it's not just simply association per se, but it's a specific feature of gold that leads to that association. Only when the gold is primarily beautifying the Baal Makriv. In other words, it's not just enough to be actively in the Avoda, but it has to be something that beautifies the Baal Avoda. Okay, that's when it becomes a problem. Now, what's the last move in the Gemara? Oh, 1 second. So he wears Big Day Zav. This is the last question you have to answer. He wears the Big Day Zav b'chutz, and that's Avodas Yom Kippurim. And there's some kapara b'chutz, right?
Oh, there is a kapara.
There's some kapara. There has to be. So what the Gemara says, he wears it b'chutz, but not b'fnim. B'fnim wears lavan. What's the difference? So what it's saying is that, just fasten your seatbelt for this one, okay? What it's saying is that, is it kapara per se?
I put on a hat.
No, for him, he needs to. Is it kapara? Yeah, because there's certain words I'm going to use. Is it kapara per se? Is it kapara per se? right? But if it's kapara per se, then it wouldn't matter where he is. Or, say it again.
It's the essential part of the process.
Right, it's the essential kapara, which means it's a different type of kapara. Different type of kapara takes place in the Kodesh Kodashim. That's the Gemara's answer. So it's qualifying. It's qualifying the two types of kapara. Okay? Okay. The Gemara says what? The Gemara says that shofar is like bifnim.
Right.
Shofar is similar to the Kodesh Kodashim. Why? So this is what we said yesterday. Because the same way that the Kohen Gadol is the vehicle for kapara, and not just any old kapara, but as Yaakov mentioned, the awesomest essential kapara. So too, the shofar also functions in the same way. So what does Rav Yossi come along and say? Rav Yossi says that's not true. Rav Yossi says, Rav Yossi Amalach the Ka'amris ein ktego nasa snegor hani mili b'miftim. Right? The high shofar mechutzu, the high shofar mechutzu. So he's not bothered by that. He's saying that one of them is talking about the Kohen Gadol in the Beis HaMikdash doing his avodah. The other one's talking about a shofar. What are you making the comparison for? In other words, Ula's way of learning Rabbanan's push is to say that shofar is like the Kohen Gadol's avodah bifnim. Okay? Rav Yossi is saying that's not true. Rav Yossi is saying, what are you making that comparison for? They're not the same. They're not the same. So what's the machlokas? The way I'd frame the question is like this. I'd say the question is, they're both agreed there's an association with the gold of the Big Day Zav of the Kohen Gadol and the Egel Zav. The question is that does that extend to shofar or not?
Yeah.
Why would it and why wouldn't it? But now don't think philosophically, halachically. Everyone agrees there's an association you can make with the Kohen Gadol and the Big Day Zav and the Egel Zav. Now, the question is bifnim, right? When the Kohen Gadol is inside the Kodesh Kodashim, what kind of begadim is he wearing? Lavan. There's no white. So is there any association with the Egel Zav?
Wait, I thought it was a hypothetical. Yeah.
What kind of clothing does the Kohen Gadol wear inside the Kodesh Kodashim?
White.
White, okay? So what we're saying is that the same way he wears white. Why does he wear white in the Kodesh Kodashim?
Because he can't wear gold.
Right, so it's not to reduce the association with the Egel Zav.
White's not arbitrary. It's where the not gold is the intent.
Right, I'm saying so to avoid that. So the shofar also can't be a par because the shofar is just like the Kohen Gadol's avoda in the Kodesh Kodashim.
So now you want to positive.
Well, yeah, but the idea is there's two ways to look at the Kohen Gadol, and if you look at it one way, you won't be able to extend it, and if you look at the other way, you will be able to extend it. I'm not worried about hashkafically what Rav Yossi's view or connection was. I don't think that's the issue. The issue is how you look at the Kohen Gadol in a halachic way. Is he when it comes to kapara? So the Rabbanan side is easy to say. The Rabbanan is saying basically the Kohen Gadol. We said this before. The Kohen Gadol is the paradigm of bringing about kapara. So therefore, if he's the paradigm, you're able to extend from a paradigm to something else. You can take that idea and bring it over to shofar. There's no problem with that.
Unless the other thing is not a paradigm.
Right. If it's not a paradigm, then what is it? There's one way you can't make an extension. I think it's as follows. I think what you could say is that either do you look at the Kohen Gadol as the paradigm of kapara, or see the actual tsura of the halacha of kapara, meaning the halachic, the construct of kapara, the halachic construct is the Kohen Gadol. He is, or put another way, he's like the gavra of kapara. Right? It's isolated just to him. There's no mechanism to extend. You can't duplicate that halachic idea. You can duplicate a concept.
Well, like only he can do.
That's it, only him. Right. Doesn't mean you can't. Doesn't mean that philosophically you can't engage in kapara. But I'm saying there's a difference between saying someone's a paradigm, right? Like he's the ideal example, or it's halachically he's it. He is the kapara. In other words, he is the vehicle kapara. So that's a halachic idea.
You want to distinguish.
For example, the halacha is you're supposed to have basar and yain on Yom Tov, right? Is there anything else you can have other than basar to fulfill that? To fulfill simcha? No. Are there other things that can make you happy? Of course. But it's only basar. This is the thing. Seen by the Kohen Gadol. When it comes to the highest expression of kapara, he is it. That's it. You can't duplicate such an idea. That's a halachic idea. They halachified the notion of the... My turn. Halachified the notion of the Kohen Gadol.
Wait, so what's the Rabban's position?
Let's say the Kohen Gadol is a paradigm of kapara. Well, shofar also. Shofar is part of that category. It's also a paradigm of kapara. But Rav Yossi is saying that no, he's saying he's not arguing. By the way, that of the nature of shofar bringing you to kapara. Of course, how can you argue with that idea? He's just saying that you can't borrow it from the Kohen Gadol. You can't make that extension because the Kohen Gadol, it's a fixed idea. He's the halachic. Even if I use Johnny's term shaliach, but that's a halachic idea. You're applying halachic reality to him.
For the reason that
You're chayim in kapara, but you're not a vehicle for kapara. But the Kohen Gadol is the only thing that's a vehicle for kapara. He brings about the kapara. Nothing else can do that.
So that's what's fair.
One more point, and then at least let's prepare a buy for tomorrow. What does the Gemara then say? The Gemara has one big problem here.
Where are you?
Okay, go back to where.
Hayim?
No. Before I buy it, go back to where it says, "Kevan deli zikaron hu gebifnim dami." Okay, so the Gemara concludes. I don't remember this. The Gemara concludes that the time of the Rabbanon. How does it work? Why won't Rabbanon use a shofar b'par? Right? Because they're going to say that you have to use because the blowing of the shofar is similar to the work of the Kohen Gadol and the Kodesh Kodashim. They're both paradigms. Okay. But the Gemara says 1 second. Deha Tana Mimnei Shehu Karen Kamar. All right. So 1 second. There's a big problem. The Mishnah doesn't say this is the reason why. In other words, we just gave this beautiful, nice reason. Ein Kategar Nasas Negar. That's the reason the Gemara gives. That's the reason the Gemara now gives. Ula's reason is why don't Rabbanon use a shofar of a cow? Ein Kategar Nasas Negar. That's the right. But that's not what the Mishnah says. The Mishnah says why don't Rabbanon use a shofar of a cow? Because it's called Karen and not shofar. So how could this reason supplant the reason of the Mishnah? The Gemara says a very weak answer. Chada ve'od ka'amar. That means no. Really, there are two reasons. Okay, there's one reason which is really the essential reason. Ve'od ka'amar means and another reason. In other words, there's the essential reason and then another reason to kind of buttress the first reason. But wait. So the Gemara says Chada de ein k'teir nasas negar. The first reason is ein k'teir nasas negar, and then the od kamar is b'mnei shehu karen. All right, this is an extremely problematic Gemara. Why is this Gemara problematic? The Gemara also says Abai Amar. So now Abai comes along and gives. There's a much easier type of thinking. We're getting out of ein k'teir nasas negar and something more halachic. So the Gemara says Abaye Amar, okay, Hainu Taimeu Drabanan, right? So Abaye says, what was Rabbanan's reason? Again, going back to the original question, why does Rabbanan say you can't use a cow horn as a shofar? So he says, very simple, shofar Amar Rachmana. So what did the Torah say? It says shofar, right? And it doesn't say v'lo shnaim u'shlosha shofros. It doesn't say 2 or 3 shofros. Okay, so what does God say? He says, blow a shofar, not shofrot.
What does that do?
So what do you mean shnayim or shlosha?
Specific.
No. Nice try though. The ha'tana. Okay, well I'll explain what that is in a second. The ha'tana v'neishu karen ka'amar. Okay, the Gemara asks the same question again. But 1 second, it can't be the reason why it's not shnayim or shlosha shofros, because what about mehu karen? Chadav o kamar. Chadav the shofar echad. Amar Rachmana v'lo shnayim shel shofros v'o meishu karen. Okay, what shnayim?
In other words, the Mishnah didn't say that reason.
Same thing as before, though.
Yeah.
So we have the same problem again. Okay, what shnayim shel shofros? Okay, how does?
Back up, 30 seconds back.
Let's say it slowly. Abaye says that you can't use the par because it's shnayim or shlosha shofros. What does that mean? It means like this. It means that when you look in the how does the horn of a cow grow? I don't know why anyone would know this, but
Steps, exactly.
so it's like there's a shofar, and then another shofar goes on top of that, and another shofar goes on top of that. It's like one building on the other. So if you use that horn, you won't be using one shofar, you'll be using multiple shofars. And God said one shofar. Okay, one shofar. Okay, is that clear?
Yeah.
Does everyone understand that?
Yeah.
Shnayim Shlosha shofars means that in the way it grows, it's clear that it's more than one shofar. Okay? More than one shofar. Okay, but then the Gemara says, what about the reason of Karen? So just like before, same problem. This is the essential reason, Shnayim Shlosha shofros, and the Mishnah is like a supplementary reason, which is the same question we have to ask on Ula. What about Rav Yossi? So Rav Yossi says no. Rav Yossi Amalach de Ka'amar Shofar Echad Amar Rachmana V'lo Shnayim V'Shlosha Shofros Kevon de Mechabre Ahadadi Chadhu. Okay, what does that mean? What does that mean? Anyone know what that means?
Where are we?
Something of each other.
It says it's the first white line.
Yeah.
They're partners, they're friends with each other, what's that?
Came on the Mechabre.
They go together?
Mechabre Ahadadi
They go together?
Chadhu. How do they grow? How do they grow? Mechaber, they're attached to each other as one. So you're right, maybe they're 2 or 3 shofros. Or is he saying, well, that's a good question. But he's saying that maybe you're going to tell me 2 or 3 shofros, but they're not, because it grows this way. In other words,
Essentially still.
So it's like
essentially still one. Go back to the Gemara again. Go back to Abai. Abai Amar, Hainu Tamei Rabbanan Shofar Amar Rachmana, V'lo Shnayim Shlosh Shofros. V'ha Depara, Kevan Dekai Gildi, Mischaze Kishnayim Shlosh Shofros. Since the par is layer by layer, now keyword here, Mischaze. What does Mischaze mean? It looks like. Whenever the Gemara says it looks like, what is that telling you? It's not actually, but it looks like. Oh, Rashi, Gildi, V'chol Shana V'Shana, and every year, Nikeres Tosofaso. You can see inside. If you cut the horn in half, what would you see? Like in trees, you'd see additional. Exactly. Okay. V'hu Kimin Geled Mosif Al Geled Rishon B'Tachliso Sharishon Tchil Sheni. So what happens? So when one, I guess, horn thingy finishes, immediately another one grows on top of it. So if you look at it, every year you're seeing another horn grow on the original horn. So that's not. Is that actually 2 or 3 shofros? No. Mechzi kishloshayim shofros. What's Rav Yossi's response?
It's actually one.
Why?
It's one.
That's the way it grows. You're right. It's true that it grows in a way where it appears like 2 or 3 shofros, but ultimately, is it one physical shofar? Yes. So therefore, it's not a problem.
What's not the problem?